Hello, hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with our podcast host Keegan. And this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And today we have a very special guest, and his name is Benjamin Lesser. And he is the founder of the Zachor Foundation, and he's also a survivor of the Holocaust. So please welcome Benjamin Lesser to the show. How are you doing, sir?
All right. My name is Ben Lesser. I'm a Holocaust survivor. I was born in Krakow, Poland, to a wonderful family of 7. My wonderful father, mother. I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. And out of the family of 7, only 2 of us survived. The rest of them were slaughtered by the Nazis. Only my sister Lola and I, only the 2 of us survived. We lived by the way, my father had 2 businesses. He had a wine and syrup business, manufacturing. He also had a chocolate factory. He was the first one to manufacture chocolate-covered wafers, something like Kit Kat in Europe. They were in a little shape of animals, bears, rabbits, with tinfoil on it. Every time my father would come home from business, us kids would search his pockets. And sure enough, he made sure to have some goodies in there. We lived in a beautiful 3-story apartment house on a major thoroughfare, a major street in Krakow, Poland. The ground floor, one side of the entrance was our apartment. And the other side of the entrance, there was another Jewish couple who had 2 young daughters, a little younger than I, and the mother gave birth to an infant little boy 2 months earlier. One early morning, the 5th day after occupation of Krakow, a truck pulls up to the gate full of soldiers, and they're banging on their gate at 5 a.m. and the super came running out with his shirt tail hanging out. Whoa, what's going on? All they wanted to know where the Jewish people lived. And he was quick to oblige. He showed them our apartment and our neighbor's apartment. They came breaking down the door and pistol whipping us. We were in bed 5 a.m. and they were pistol whipping us. In their hands they had sacks, open sacks, and they were yelling at us, throw in all your valuables, money, gold, silver, anything they could find of value, they threw it into the bag. And they were beating up my father to open up the safe. While my father's trying to open up the safe, we hear that screaming, terrible screaming from our neighbor's apartment. My sister Lola and I ran out through the kitchen door into their kitchen door from the yard, and this is what we saw. We saw this monster was holding the infant by its legs and swinging it and yelling to the parents, make him shut up. The parents and the daughters are screaming, our baby, don't hurt our baby. With a smirk on his face, you can see he was enjoying what he was doing. He smashes the baby's head into a doorpost, killing it instantly. All of us jumped on this monster. The other soldiers heard there is something going on there. They came running in and they pistol whipped us, pulled us off him. They were a little shocked to see this themselves. They said to him, "Okay, Hans, let's go." They gathered up all their valuables, threw it in a sack, threw it in the truck, and took off. That was the 5th day of occupation. From that day on, there were new ordinances coming in daily. The Jewish people had to wear a Star of David. You could no longer travel here or travel there. There was a curfew for the Jewish people. You could not be on the street after 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. And the strange thing is, for the Jewish people, there were no judges, no juries, not even prisons. If they found you disobeying any of these ordinances, they simply shot you. And every morning there were people laying on the street and people going around the push carts and picking them up. This was going on for a while. Then a new ordinance came in, said the Jewish people may no longer reside in Krakow, but they gave us a choice. If you wanted to stay in Krakow, you had to go inside the ghetto. They were forming a ghetto. And I hope you know what a ghetto is. Terrible place. Mm-hmm. My father's whole family in Krakow, numbering over 200, they all went into the ghetto. Mm-hmm. My father is preparing to go in the ghetto when a young man walks up to him and says, "Mr. Lesser, you know how I feel about your daughter Lola. I am in love with her. Someday I'd love to marry her, but do me a favor, come into the same community where my parents and I are moving to." The name of the community was called Nepolomice. My father gave him a choice to go into the ghetto or Nepolomice. He chose Nepolomice. That was miracle one, because all the people who went inside the ghetto were taken on trains to Belzec a few months later, to Belzec, which was a extermination camp, and everyone was killed. Had we gone into the ghetto, you wouldn't hear my story today.
Mm-mm. Wow.
Well, my father's preparing to go into to go to Nepolomice now, and he's packing everything. And of course, my father's businesses were both confiscated. They just chased him away. They wouldn't even let him go and take his briefcase. Mm-hmm. So my father, we found out, had 1,000 American dollars that he saved up for a rainy day. Mm-hmm. He took the money and he pasted it in a religious book between the pages, and he put it in a sack full of other books on the wagon, and we're now leaving Krakow. Mm-hmm. An hour outside of the city, we're being stopped, and two husky Nazis jump on the wagon. Mm-hmm. The first thing they wanted to know, do we have any Jewish literature books? And they saw two sacks full of books. They picked them up and heaved it on the side of the road. They had a mountain full of books. They were waiting till everybody crossed the road. Then they would have a bonfire of books. My sister Lola spoke a beautiful German, and she walks up to him. She says, "Look, my father is a writer. He wrote his autobiography in this one book. Let him keep that one book. He looked at her, maybe he liked the way she spoke German. He says, okay, I'll give you 5 minutes if you can find it. Well, the whole family started to climb on the mountain of books. All these books look alike. They were brown or black, leather bound. We keep sliding down. After 5 minutes, he chased us away. No book. You couldn't recognize my father. He's going to a new community with a family of 6, without a penny to his name. We were a family of 7, but my oldest sister, Goldie, was caught in Munkach with her grandparents. My mother's side of the grandparents lived in Munkach. So she was caught there when the war broke out, which is good because Munkach was a free country now. Mm-hmm. But my father has a family of 6 going into a new community. Michael rented a half in a farmhouse. One half of the farmhouse lived the apple orchard farmer. Mm-hmm. The other half was our room, a big room. And between the 2 apartments, there was a baking oven. People used to bake their own bread. Mm-hmm. My future brother-in-law, Michael, heard what happened to my father's money. He brought my father a sack full of flour, 100 pounds of flour, figuring he'll be able to bake bread to feed the family. Mm-hmm. When my father saw the flour, his face lit up. Instead of baking bread to feed the family, he started to bake pretzels. Why pretzels? All you need for pretzels is flour, water, and salt. Those ingredients he had. Mm-hmm. Then he took those pretzels to the neighboring bars and offered it for sale. It was a novelty. They started to buy the pretzels. Now my father became a little baker in that community. I don't know how he knew that, but he started to bake mandelbread, pretzels, cakes, matzahs, breads. He became a whole baker there. This lasted a year. And I remember baking with my father. I was 12 years old. To this day, I still remember some of the baked goods. When I have a chance, I still do it. It reminds me that, like I am baking with my father. Mm-hmm. Well, my sister Lola and Michael get married. And we have a big, lot of people who came to the wedding. And it was done in the backyard. Mm-hmm. And that was not allowed by the Nazis. They would only allow 3 or 4 people together, but we had about 35 people. Oh, wow. And out of the 35 people, only 3 of us survived. Michael, Lola, and I. The rest of them were all slaughtered. So now, Michael and Lola move out into a duplex. Mm-hmm. The owner of the duplex happened to be the mayor of Neapolomice. He was the mayor. And he lived on one side and Michael lived on the other. One night he comes home, he says, Michael, Lola, save yourselves. I heard a rumor there is going to be a raid against the Jewish people tonight or tomorrow night. When Michael heard that, he went out and he hired the wagon with the driver, and we snuck out in the middle of the night. The only place we can go to was to a nearest city called Bochnia. Bochnia had a ghetto. That meant we had to go inside a ghetto. Bochnia ghetto had a very bad reputation. What happened? Every so often, 2 or 3 dump trucks would come into the ghetto, and the Nazis would go from house to house, pull out the children from their beds, and throw them into these dump trucks. You can imagine the parents screaming for the children screaming for the parents. And as they filled up those 2 or 3 dump trucks, they would start to pull out of the ghetto. The parents were running behind these trucks and screaming for their children. But these cultured people had machine guns at the end of each truck. And they would mow down the parents running behind these children. That resonated throughout Europe. Stay away from Bochnia ghetto because of these atrocities. But we had no choice. And it's a good thing we did leave, because in Neapolitan said there was a raid, and the Jewish people were picked out from their apartments, thrown into trucks, taking them to the forest. The men were given shovels, dig a ditch, and everyone was shot. How do we know that? My sister Lola and I survived. We went back to Neapolitan after the war to find out what happened to all the people. The farmers were telling us, as they went to the forest to pick mushrooms and berries to sell in the market in the morning, they saw those trucks pull in, and they were hiding behind trees. They saw everything that happened. They say the ground was moving for 3 days afterwards. They didn't care if they killed you or not. They buried you.
Wow.
Well, now we are in Bochnia ghetto. The driver unloads us on a sidewalk, and we sit there, and all of a sudden Michael sees his school buddy by the name of Farber. The school buddy was a Jewish policeman wearing a uniform. They didn't have any weapons. All they had is a baton on the side. Their job was to keep order inside the ghetto. Farber says to Michael, "What are you doing here?" And Michael tells him the story. Michael tells him the story. Farber says to Michael, "Don't worry, I'll find a place for you to live." He took Michael, Lola, his parents, and his sister to someplace else. And he took my father, my mother, myself, my little brother. He took us to another apartment. Well, all it was is one big room. And there were 8 other people in that room. So now we were 12. There were no beds. All we had was straw on the ground. Blankets were hanging from the ceiling, separating each family. Blankets on the straw. Everybody in the ghetto had to work. If you didn't work, you didn't receive any rations. You would die. I was 12 and a half, maybe 13 years old. And my job was in a uniform factory, sewing on buttons on uniform. It was easy work, but it was 12 hours a day, very little sleep and very little food. And that lasted over a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
And then Farber goes over to Michael and Lola. He says, "Save yourselves. I heard the rumor there's going to be a raid against the Jewish people here in the ghetto tonight." Ever since those trucks would come in and pull out the children from their beds, every apartment and every house had a hiding place. They called it bunkers. That's when I found out that our bunker was this ornate piece of furniture where you hang your coats and jackets. You see, you open the door, you push the clothing apart, the back panel would slide apart. There was a hole in the wall, and the 12 of us could crawl through into that hole and stand between two buildings. Lucky for us, the outside of the buildings were connected. Only the roofs were separated, and it was snowing. It was cold. The last person had to close the door behind him, put the clothing back, the back panel back, and we stood there all night long, shaking and shivering. And we heard dogs barking. We heard screaming, shootings. We heard our neighbors are being torn apart by these dogs. Towards morning, it got quiet. When it got quiet, we dared to come out. When we came out, we couldn't believe what our eyes are seeing. Our neighbors torn apart by these dogs laying in the snow. We see a mother with an infant torn apart. The mother was still breathing. And there are people going around in push carts, picking up these bodies and pieces of bodies and putting them in the push carts, and then taking them to the ghetto square and piling them up as high as they could. And then these cultured people came with gasoline cans, and they poured gasoline over these bodies. Some of these bodies were still breathing, and started a human Bochnia ghetto bonfire. Human Bochnia ghetto square bonfire. Can you imagine what it was like? It was absolute chaos, hell. People were still, some people were still walking a little bit. Some people were without an arm, without a leg. Don't ask what was going on. And I knew that Lola and Michael were hiding in a doghouse. You heard right, a doghouse. You picked up the floor from the doghouse. There was a step ladder, and there was room for 7 people to hide. They had beddings and provisions. Everything was 7 people.
Wow.
Lola and Michael is now telling me the story. They were about to go into the doghouse when another Jewish policeman by the name of Morris Schiller walks up to them. He says, Michael, Lola, I know about your doghouse hiding place. Unless you take my mother and my sister along, I'm going to tell the authorities. Well, there was only room for 7. Now they were 9. So Lola and Michael decided to walk away so the other 7 could go down into the doghouse.
Wow.
While Lola and Michael are walking the street, this friendly policeman, Farber, sees them. He says, Michael, Lola, why aren't you hiding someplace? So Michael tells him the story about Morris Schiller. Farber says to him, don't worry. Where my sister and her 2 children are hiding, there is room for you. Follow me. He took them to a leather factory, a tannery. Above the tannery, there was a water tank. He says, my sister and her 2 children are inside that water tank.
Oh, wow.
In the morning, when you hear my knock on the tank, that means the coast is clear, you can come out. Well, Michael and Lola went up a ladder to the water tank. There was a rope, and they lowered themselves into the water tank. And this is what they saw. His sister is standing knee-deep in water. His little girl is waist-high in water. And the mother is holding a little infant boy that's sound asleep. Lola picked up the infant little boy. Michael picked up the girl from the floor. And they stood there in the water, freezing cold, all night long, shivering and shaking. And there were little water rats nibbling at their feet. They kept... Anyway, they heard the same thing we heard, shootings, dogs barking. Towards morning, it got quiet. Farber gave that signal on the tank. It was time to get out. They pulled themselves out, came down the ladder, and after they got some circulation back into their legs, the first thing they wanted to know is go to the doghouse and see what happens to Michael's and Lola's family. What happened to everybody? So they came to the doghouse, and this is what they saw. I can't show you the picture, but everybody was laying in the snow with a bullet hole in their head. Everybody was dead. Little Marika is still holding on to a doll that Lola made her for her 7th birthday. She's laying in the snow with a bullet hole holding on to the doll. When Lola saw that, she started to scream. Michael stopped her. He says, they may still be burning bodies. They may still hear you. So with a quelched cry, they knew what they had to do. You see, according to the Jewish religion, you're supposed to bury your loved ones within 12 or 24 hours if you can. Michael and Lola went out and they found a rickety wheelbarrow. They put the family on the wheelbarrow and pushed them to the cemetery. At the cemetery, Michael found a shovel, and Lola, with her bare hands, are making up a grave, and they put their family into the grave. When Morris Schiller walks up to them, he says it wasn't my fault, and it wasn't his fault, because his own mother and his own sister were also killed. However, he says, that graves that you put your family in, I want it for my mother and my sister. You're going to have to take them out. Well, Lola started to cry. Michael says he has the power over us. They had to take everybody out, put them back on the wheelbarrow, take them to another spot, and start all over again.
Wow.
While this is going on, there is a commotion. While this is going on, they hear a Jeep is coming up the hill, and the Jeep stops at the gate of the cemetery. And two husky Nazis jump into the cemetery and yelling, Morris Schiller, Morris Schiller. And he walks up to them and says, Jawohl, here I am. They pull out a revolver and they shot him. This is what they did to anyone who has seen too much. They didn't want to leave any witnesses. While this is going on, Michael and Lola buried their family. The Jeep went back down, and they, holding each other, are going down the hill. To continue this tell this part of the story takes a long time. But all I can tell you, please read my book, Living a Life That Matters, From Nazi Nightmare to American Dream. If you read my book, you'll find out everything, plus how we were able to escape the ghetto, get out of the ghetto, and we took 25 people with us outside the ghetto. While we were outside the ghetto, excuse me, while outside the ghetto, Michael befriends a truck driver who was hauling coal. He was hauling coal, and he asked him, would he please convert his truck into a double-decker, coal on top, and between the coal and the chassis, some people could hide, and he could take it to the border of Czechoslovakia, Poland, and there'll be a smuggler waiting for us. We will pay him a lot of money. He agreed to do it. And one day he came, he converted his truck. There was room for 10 people to hide, 5 and 5, just like sardines. The first group going was 8 from this one family that had a lot of money to pay for this, and 2 from our family. They were paying for our family, 2. Michael and Lola decided to go first. Why did they go first? Because you couldn't always trust these drivers. They would take your money up front, and then they would turn you into this SS Gestapo, and they get paid ransom money for people trying to escape, Jews trying to escape. So they went first, and we had a password. If the driver comes back with the right password, then you can trust him. Sure enough, 2 days later, the driver comes back with the right password. Now it was time for another 10 people. My father and mother insisted that I and my little brother go with 8 other people.
Mm-hmm.
All I can tell you is we felt like we're being entombed.
Mm.
We laid down facing each other, laying on our arms like sardines, 5 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
About an hour outside the city of Bochnia, we're being stopped. Halt! And we see through the cracks of the truck that there are soldiers with rifles. Oh, we figured somebody turned us in, they're gonna kill us.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're talking to the driver, and the truck started to move again. We felt, oh, they're releasing us, until we saw that on the step next to the driver stood a soldier with a rifle. Now we heard soldiers are walking on top of the coal. The coal dust is filtering through. My little brother is about to sneeze. I'm holding his nose and his mouth. And they were with us for 2 hours. After 2 hours, the truck stopped. We were already saying our prayers. All of a sudden we hear, Dankeschön, Dankeschön. Thank you, thank you. They were just hitchhiking. Talk about miracles. They had no idea 10 Jewish people are hiding under their feet.
Wow.
The driver took us for another 2 hours to a forest and told us to get out. And he says, walk into the forest. About 300 yards in there, you're going to find the tool shed. Inside the tool shed, there is the smuggler. He's waiting for you. Sure enough, we went to the tool shed and we met the smuggler, who happened to be a forest ranger. He was the smuggler. He took us in the middle of the forest. About 2:30 a.m., he told us to lay down on our stomach and look up. It was pitch black, but we hardly see. Looks like soldiers with rifles are walking back and forth, and dogs next to them. He told us quietly that at 3 a.m. they will come down the hill. They'll meet fresh soldiers down the hill. They'll have a little ceremony, and then the fresh soldiers will come up with their dogs. Between the two happenings, there's about 5 or 10 minutes that we can cross the border.
Oh, wow.
Okay, 3 o'clock, sure enough, we saw the guards are going downhill with their dogs. After they were far enough away, we shimmied our way up to the barbed wire. The smuggler picked up the barbed wire. He says, cross to the other side, or be very careful, because the edge of the mountain is a big ravine and you can tumble. If you tumble, it's all over. You have to sit down at the edge of the mountain, hold hands, and slide down quietly, which is what we did. We sat down at the edge of the mountain and we started to slide down. Suddenly we hit a plateau. I asked my little brother, are you okay? He says, yes. When somebody taps me on my shoulder, I jump out of my skin. Who in the world, in the middle of nowhere and middle in the dark? He says, Binish? No one in the family except the immediate family called me Binish. He says, I'm your Uncle Belo, your mother's brother. I came here to take you across to Hungary from Czechoslovakia. We were so happy. How in the world did you find me here in the middle of nowhere? He says, when Lola and Michael went across 2 days earlier, they contacted me and they told me exactly where. I waited here for you.
That's awesome.
Well,
Wow.
we were so happy to see each other. But to tell you how we had to cross another border from Czechoslovakia to Hungary is too long of a story. I'll just skip this. Again, it's in my book.
Okay.
So now we are in Budapest, Hungary. We meet Michael and Lola. They were waiting for us. We embrace. We go out. We have a meal together. Then what I had to do, I didn't like. I had to go into jail. My uncle had to take me in Budapest into a jail, put us in a cell while he was going up to the office to sign papers that he's going to be our guardian.
Mm-hmm.
And he vouches for us. That's how we became legal in Hungary. And then a half hour later, he came and they took us out of jail.
Mm-hmm.
We were very happy, and he took us to the railroad station. We boarded a train to go to Munkács. My oldest sister Goldie is in Munkács. My grandparents from my mother's side, uncles, aunts, everybody is in Munkács. Next morning we arrived to Munkács, and was a happy reunion. My uncle, who was a rich man, asked me and my little brother to stay in his house. He had a yardage goods store. He would sell yardage goods for dresses and for suits. Above his store, there was his house, and we stayed there in his house. Okay. Life in Hungary was going on like normal. People going to weddings and bar mitzvahs and temples. You know, if I tell them what happened in Poland, most of them didn't believe it. And my family, who believed it, said, but this will never happen in Hungary because Hungary is an ally of Germany. Why would Hitler siphon off soldiers from the front to occupy a friendly country when he needs every soldier on the front? And it didn't make sense. But my uncle, I was telling my uncle, if the Nazis ever come in, they'll take everything away from you. It would make sense if you could convert some of your assets into diamonds where we can hide it on our body. He listened to me. One day he comes home with boxes full of shoes, a pair of black shoes for every member of the family. He told us no, that in the heels of the shoes there are diamonds. Use it only in a life-threatening situation. And he gave us all these shoes. And then meanwhile, we're waiting for our parents to come across. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4. Nobody's coming. Somebody came across who knew my parents, and he told us what happened. As my parents were about to go into that coal truck, about going in the coal truck, if Polish farmers saw what was happening, so they called the Gestapo, and everyone was pulled out, including the driver. All 11 people were put against the wall and everyone was shot. That's what I find out what happened to my parents. A few months later, in March of 1944, the Nazis marched into Hungary like they were invited guests. And when they came in, they knew every Jewish person, their address, their education, their businesses, their how. How? Who's yelling? How? They didn't have any they didn't have any computers in those days. IBM had punch cards, and they would sell these punch cards to anyone who would pay the price. IBM doesn't deny it. They say they had no idea to what purpose they're going to use it. Anyway, within 2 months' time, they started to shuttle Jewish people into death camps. We don't know this. This is what they told us. Germany needs workers. Every able-bodied man and woman will be working in Germany. Older people will be cared for. Children will be schooled. Bring along all your valuables that you can carry with you, but leave everything else behind. Anyone found hiding will be shot on the spot. Well, everyone believed that. It made sense. Germany needs workers. And we started to march. They marched us out to the railroad station. They lined us up 80 to a cattle car. And while we're waiting to get into the cattle car, I see two men on a stretcher walking, and they set the stretcher down by my feet. I take a look. It's my sister Goldie, all black and blue, bloodied. You couldn't recognize. I says, Goldie, what happened to you? She says she went as far, she tried to escape. She went as far as the railroad station. A Hungarian gendarme who went to school with her recognized her. He turned her into the SS. They beat her to a pulp. Now they're ordering us to go in. They were ordering us to go in to the cattle car, 82 cattle car. It wouldn't be so bad if it were not for the fact that everybody had a bundle. Now it got so tight that if you wanted to sit down, somebody had to stand up. There were 2 buckets of water in the corner. Once the water was gone, there were no sanitary facilities, no toilets. 80 people, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, no toilet. We started to use those buckets. Once the bucket got filled up, they started to overflow. Now you couldn't sit on the floor of the cattle car because of the human waste. Are you bleeding?
No. I had my nose run a little bit.
Okay.
But wow. That must have been. I'm sorry.
All right. After, on the 3rd night, we arrived at a place called Oświęcim. Oświęcim was Polish for Auschwitz. But we don't know that. We don't know about Auschwitz. We don't know about. Polish Oświęcim. We don't know that. The train stayed there, and we see a sign says Arbeit macht frei. Labor gives you freedom. That's the sign of Auschwitz. We don't know that. And after an hour, the train starts to move out again, and it goes down about 2 kilometers down the road, and it stops in Birkenau. Birkenau was part of Auschwitz. Birkenau was where most of the killing was done, was in Birkenau. Train stops, they open the doors, and they yell, "Leave all your belongings where it is. Don't you pick anything up. Women and children to the right, men to the left." I'm holding my hands of my sister Goldie, my little brother Tuli, and we're just pulled apart, never to see each other again. They went straight to the gas chambers. Who knew? Who knew about gas chambers? And I went with my uncle. Remember, I was only 15 and a half, but I could have gone with my little brother as a child. But I decided to go with my uncle and cousin as an adult, which was a miracle, because had I gone with my sister, I wouldn't be here to tell you the story.
Wow.
So now we're standing in line, my uncle, my cousin, and I, and we see a doctor in front of us, a man who looks like a doctor. It was Dr. Mengele, the angel of death. He decided who should live, who should die with a flick of a finger. And he goes there like this with the white glove, right, left, right, left. Every once in a while, he would ask somebody a question. When I came close to him, I heard them ask a young man, "Kannst du 5 kilometers laufen? Can you run 5 kilometers? Or would you rather go by truck?" He said he had a bad knee. He would rather go by truck. Poor soul, not realizing that meant certain death. They sent him to the right. But who knew? Who knew? But it didn't make sense to my mind. I see the barracks are right here. Why would he ask, "Can you run 5 kilometers?" if the barracks are here? I figured he's testing us to see if we're strong enough to work. I tell my uncle and my cousin, whatever he asks you, tell him, yes, you can run. You're healthy. You can work. But let me go first, I said. Let me go first. So I went in front of him, in front of this angel of death. I stretched myself out because I was only 15 and a half. And I say to him, I salute him, and I say, 18 Jahre alt, gesund und arbeitsfähig. I'm 18 years old, I'm healthy, and I can work. So he asked me, "Kannst du 5 kilometers laufen? Can you run 5 kilometers?" I said, "Jawohl, yes." He sent me to the left. My uncle, my cousin also came to the left. And then they were taking all of us people in the left to a big auditorium, like a school auditorium. Inside, the guards are all over and they're screaming, "Get out of your clothes, get undressed, get out of your shoes, and walk over to the line of barbers. They're going to cut your hair, and then they're going to send you to the showers." Well, remember, my shoes had diamonds. My uncle who gave me those shoes and his son, my cousin, they got out of their shoes. And I refused. I had diamonds in my shoes. Picture this. I'm naked with the black, beautiful shoes walking up to these barbers. They cut my hair all over my body. And they don't say anything about my shoes. The guards are walking back and forth and looking at us. And like God blinded their eyes, they don't say anything about my shoes. And I walk into the showers with my shoes on. After the showers, they gave us these striped clothes and another pair of shoes, wooden cloth, and there was canvas on top. I got into those shoes and I put my black shoes under my arms, under my jacket, and we walked out to the barracks. And when we came to the barracks, the Stubenälteste comes out. He counts us and he speaks to us in a broken German, and I can tell he is a Polish inmate by his language. He says, "Ha, you Hungarian Jews, you think you're here on vacation? Think again. You see those chimneys, those ashes, those flames? Those are your mothers, your fathers, your brothers, and your sisters. And if you don't behave and do exactly what you're told, this is how you're going to wind up, ashes." I couldn't believe my little brother, my sister, ashes. And they chased us in. My uncle and cousin and I took an upper bunk. We were so exhausted that we all fell asleep. The minute we hit it, we fell asleep. An hour later, my cousin wakes me up. He says, "Ben, get up, get up." I says, "What?" He says, "Listen." I hear a shouting, a screaming, a crying, or a singing. I can't make it out. Then he says, "Look, one side of the wall had a board missing in the wall, and we can see flames shooting up." He says, "What is this?" I says, "I don't know, but I'll find out." I went to the Stubenälteste and speak to him in Polish. "Przepraszam bardzo, excuse me, sir. Can you tell me what is going on here?" He was so happy to hear somebody speak his own language because they were all Hungarian. He says, "You Hungarian Jews, you know nothing. 3 months before Germany ever occupied Hungary, we knew that they're going to occupy Hungary because they made us dig ditches, fiery pits here for the influx of the Hungarian Jews. They knew those trains would come in fast and furious. The crematorium wouldn't be able to burn everybody. So they made us dig 3 fiery pits." And he tells me, "What you hear is screams from people being thrown in the fiery pits, alive. They didn't have time for these people to go through the process." I made a big mistake. I didn't believe him. And I walked out to see with my own eyes. That's the mistake I made. That mistake I made. Because it was still nighttime. I went through my barrack outside to the other barrack, and I saw 3 trucks and people are picking up bodies. I see a young girl with a dress being picked up, and she's screaming, and they threw him into a fiery pit. And they were throwing in 3 people at a time because they had so many people they had to process. I couldn't believe what I've seen. And this sight, that vision, stays with me day and night. I can't erase it. And that was my biggest mistake because I have nightmares over this. Anyway, what we went through in Auschwitz, 3 weeks, was unbelievable. Unbelievable. We had to go through a selection every morning naked, stand in appel. They counted us, and they would look through your body to see if you're too skinny. If you're too skinny to work, they would send you to the gas chambers. This was every morning. You didn't know if you're going to live through that morning selection. After 3 weeks, they put us in trucks and they took us to a labor camp called Dernhau. Dernhau was just a rock quarry. As they dynamited the mountain and the boulders were coming down, it was our job with sledgehammers to break these boulders into manageable pieces, throw them into mining carts, run it down the tracks to a grinding machine. They made gravel out of it and then pushed the mining carts back uphill. It was back-breaking work. I didn't think my uncle will survive this. So I bribed the kitchen chef that night with my diamonds. I gave it to him to give my uncle a job in the kitchen, in the kitchen. He took my diamonds and he gave my uncle a job in the kitchen. It got easier on us because my uncle could eat in the kitchen and he would share his ration with us. So it got a little easier. And every day when we came home from work, we had to line up in rows of 5. The kitchen help had also had to come out to be counted. And everybody was counted. After the counting, they would dismiss us. We would go for our rations and go to our barracks. One day we come back, we line up, they count us, and they count us, and they count. And the commandant comes down with his Fräulein. He says, I'm going to show the Schweinhund a lesson they'll never forget. What happened? 3 inmates escaped. And because of this, he orders his henchmen to pull out every 10th person in line to receive 25 lashes. As they're pulling out every 10th person, I can see my uncle is going to be a 5 or a 10. So I push him behind me, and I took his place. I became a number 10. They took us in the middle of the yard. They brought down bundles of 1 by 1 inch hardwood stakes, about 2.5, 3 feet long. And they brought down a sawhorse. Do you know what a sawhorse is? 2 sawhorse, you put a log of wood to cut it, So it's like a triangle 2x4s, right? And they 2x4 on top.
Yeah.
And this is what they order us to do. Tiptoe in front of the sawhorse, bend over, but your stomach cannot touch the 2x4. One man is pulling your trousers real tight, and the other one starts to hit. And you have to count. If you miscount, you start from one again. If your stomach touches the 2x4, you start from one again. If your heel touches the ground, you start from one again. It was almost impossible. Almost impossible.
Yeah. Doesn't sound possible.
The first man goes up there, he bends over. One man is pulling his trousers, the other one starts to hit. He starts to count. And every time they hit him, you can see a line of blood coming through the trousers. They hit you so hard with these sharps, one by one, hardwood stakes. My God. He miscounted. The heel touched the ground. The stomach touches the 2x4. He counts again and again and again. Finally, he falls. He falls. When he falls, the commandant goes over, kicks him in the face. Get up. The poor soul couldn't get up. He pulls out the revolver, shoots him right in the temple. His girlfriend walks over to him and gives him a hug and a kiss, like he just performed the heroic act. He killed a man. Number 2 goes up. The same thing. He couldn't do it. He touches it again and again. He falls. He falls. The commandant goes over, kicks him in the face. Get up. He couldn't. He pulls out the revolver, shoots him. We have 2 dead bodies. Ben Lesser is number 4. Number 3 goes up. Number 3 was a little younger. And he too miscounted and he touched it. Don't ask. He started to scream, please have mercy on me. Don't kill me. So the commandant says to him, then stand up, come over here and face me. The poor guy stands up, makes 2 steps, and his knees gave out from under him. The commandant goes over, kicks him in the face. Get up. He couldn't. He shoots him. So we have 3 dead bodies. Ben Lesser is next in line. What can I tell you? I walked over to that sawhorse, bent over, tiptoed, without touching the 2x4. I was thinking to I think I psyched myself out. I think God was with me. He watched over me. I can't believe. Anyway, they started to hit me. One man's pulling my trousers and they're hitting me. And I feel blood is tearing apart my back. And I count out loud. And finally, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 25. I made it. You could hear a pin drop in this camp because nobody believed that anyone could survive this. I didn't believe it myself. The man who was pulling my trousers tells to me in Yiddish, go over and thank the commandant. So I stand up, blood is running down my legs. I walk over to him, salute him, and I say, Dankeschön, Herr Kommandant. Thank you very much, Herr Kommandant. When he hears that, he puts his hand on my shirt collar in the back, twists me around, facing the number 10s who are still to be beaten. He says, now I told you it could be done. If you do it like this, Junge, you have nothing to worry about. While this is going on, there is a commotion at the gate. They caught those 3 inmates who escaped. When the commandant saw that, just like a child gets sick of a toy and throws it away, he told all of us number 10 to go back to our lines. And he told his henchmen to bring down a portable gallows. And we all had to stand there and watch while they're hanging each one individually. I'll never forget the 3rd one. He was a little younger, and they put the noose around his neck. He yelled out, Shema Yisrael. It's a Jewish Hebrew prayer before you die. Only 6 words, only 6 words. When they heard that, they kicked the stool out from under him. They wouldn't let him complete the last 2 words, God is one. They were such sadists. And then they dismissed us like nothing ever happened. We went for our rations in our barracks for weeks. I could not lay on my back because of the welts. I had to lay on my stomach for weeks. And one night we heard cannon fire, like the front is closing in. That morning we reported to go to work. There's a loudspeaker saying, the camp is being evacuated. No one is working today. Line up in rows of 5 and march out. That was called a death march. Because if you could not keep pace with the soldiers, they simply shot you. Our uncle was already in the kitchen working. We couldn't say goodbye to him. We never saw him again. My cousin and I, we are now marching. Every few steps we hear pop, pop, pop. People are being shot. In my book, I write that I marched on the death march 3 or 4 weeks. We had a German professor contact my daughter Gail and tell her that he read my book and he loved it so much he asked permission to translate it to Germany, which we gave him. But he says, your father made 2 mistakes in his book. One mistake, he says he marched on the death march 2 or 3, 4 weeks. He says, Mr. Lesser marched 7 weeks, 457 kilometers from Dürnhau to Buchenwald. And he knows.
Wow.
The second mistake I'll tell you in a few minutes. Don't ask how we survived this. Most of the people were dead, were shot. I remember the last week, we were like zombies. I don't remember how many days. The last week, my shoes fell apart. So I was walking in the snow, have to keep up with the soldiers with their beautiful boots. If you didn't, they shot you.
Wow.
After the 7th week, we finally arrived at Buchenwald, the big concentration camp. In Buchenwald, they counted us and they told us to get into this barrack. They're going to feed you. You can take a shower, and after the shower, you can sleep there overnight. Next morning, you're going to have all fresh clothing and fresh shoes. Come over here again. because Buchenwald is also being evacuated, which was true. We got a good meal and we showered, and next morning we line up, they count us, and they march us out of Buchenwald. About 300 yards out of the camp, we see railroad cars lined up. They line us up 82 cattle car, and they tell us to get into the cattle cars. Well, I tell my cousin, I'll push you up, but find a spot where we can rest our backs against the wall. I remember going to Auschwitz and people all around you. It was terrible. And he did. He found a spot against the wall, and he saved the spot for me. I came in. They closed the doors. 2 hours later, they opened them up, and they threw in 80 loaves of breads, a loaf of bread for every person. Picture this. Those people who were next to the door were grabbing 5 or 6 breads. And those of us against the wall, we had nothing. We don't know where we're going, for how long it's going to be. We need a bread. So I started to climb over the sitting inmates, over their heads, to go to get to the door to wrestle out the bread from somebody who had many. One inmate that I was climbing on his head had a pocket knife, and he stabs me. I feel blood is filling up my mouth, but I can't stop. I have to get a bread. So I keep climbing. This guy has a bunch of breads. I take one away. He kicks me. I put it in my pocket, and I walk back to my cousin. He says, "Ben, what's happening to you? Bleeding." I put my finger here. It went right through my tongue. I had a big gash right through my tongue. To this day, you can still see a mark on my face because I filled up. It used to be on my throat, but now that I filled up, it's over here, over my chin bone.
Ouch.
That's 80 years old. Anyway, we had one bread between us. I rationed that bread the size of half an egg every midnight where no one could see us. If they knew we had bread, they would kill us for it. The bread lasted us for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Only a small piece, the half an egg size. And we were so hungry. I had enough willpower to save this. After a week, no more bread. No water, no bread, no water. The train is shuttling back and forth for another week. 3 weeks now. Everybody around me is dying. Everybody is dead. My cousin and I are still alive. And we arrived at a place called Dachau. When we arrived to Dachau, a loudspeaker, anyone who can walk out, get out of the cattle car, walk over the tracks, go into the yard of Dachau. Well, 80 people in my cattle car, only 4 of us walked out alive. My cousin and I and 2 other people. Everybody else was dead. And I remember we came out of the cattle car. The night before was raining, and there was water, a little bit of water in the tracks. So we laid down on the floor and licked the water in the tracks. They wouldn't let us. They chased us away. The second mistake that this professor was telling my daughter was that I say that this train only had 3,000 people. He says the train had almost 7,000 people in it. And out of the 7,000 people, when we arrived to Dachau, only 18 of us walked out alive. And I and my cousin were 2 of the 18. I am the only survivor today. It's been many years already that I'm the only survivor left.
Wow.
We came into the yard of Dachau. We see a mountain full of dead bodies. They ran out of coal to burn the bodies in the crematorium, so they piled them up, and they put my cousin and I right next to barracks, right next to these bodies. They don't give us a bunk, just on the floor. They leave us by the floor. The inmates felt sorry for us, so they gave us little waters that they had. They shared the water with us. 1 day, 2 days. The second night we hear, Befreiung of Americans, Befreiung, liberation. I tell my cousin, let's go out and see what's going on. So holding each other, we shuttle out, we come out and we see the inmates are crawling on their hands and knees and kissing the boots from the American GI. They look like gods to us. They liberated us. They're gods. And while I'm standing there with my cousin, 2 GIs walk up to me. One of them had a can of Spam. He opens up the can of Spam and he hands me the can of Spam. It smelled so good. We made a mistake. Both of us, we ate some of it. And both of us came down with dysentery. My cousin dies in my arms the night of liberation. And I talked to him. I wouldn't let him go. Anyway, I think he survived only so that I could survive. And now that he sees that I'm free, he let it go. I think that's what happened. He died, and I'm holding him. I won't let him go. They came and took him away. I followed, but my knees gave out from under me, and I fall. When I fall, they push me to a wall. I stand in this wall for 2 hours. A man walks up to me, nicely dressed, and he asks me in a broken German how many languages I speak. So I tell him, and he says, Polish? I am a Polish Jesuit priest. I came here with nuns and doctors from Paris, and we're opening up a field hospital in the yard of Dachau. Well, when I heard that, he says, I'm going to take you to that field hospital. He lifted me up like I was a sack of bones. I may have weighed 40 or 50 pounds. I was 16 and a half at that point, 16 and a half years of age. He carries me into the infirmary. There was a nun, and they put me on a cot with a white sheet on it. The nun takes my vitals, and I pass out. 5 weeks later, I wake up in St. Tertullian in a Bavarian monastery. The monks gave up a building to make it into a hospital for the survivors. This is where I was born. After 5 weeks, I opened my eyes, and the nuns saw that, started to scream. He's opening his eyes. And all the other nuns came running in. To continue with my story from this beautiful story, how I became a pioneer. I was going to fight to get our land back that we were dispersed 2,500 years ago, Judea, and how I meet my only sister who survived. It's an unbelievable story. I am in the same room with her, and I walk away for many days later. I don't know that she was alive. Unbelievable stories.
This is way too cool.
And finally, how I came to America, and how I made a beautiful life for myself after being on Skid Row on Main Street. After Skid Row, without a nickel to my name, I was turning my life around, and I made a beautiful life for myself and my family.
That is way too cool. I'm so glad you were able to do that too.
So what you heard is just a small portion, but that's all part about the Holocaust. Later on, it's now after liberation. It's a whole new life. You read my book and you learn everything.
Okay. That's awesome.
While individuals can't always choose what happens to them, but whether it's a crisis or calamity, people can choose to either let it ruin their lives or to learn from it and move forward. It's essential to understand the consequences of personal choices. It is possible to let tragedy or trauma become a reason to stop living. But it's also possible to live through extreme circumstances and commit to a life that has meaning, a life that matters. This is my book, A Life That Matters.
Living a life that matters. And where can we find your book at? Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all those great places?
No. If you buy it on the Amazon, it's a forgery. It's somebody makes these books. We don't get a nickel out of it. I need to sell these books to support Zachor Foundation. So you have to go to Zachor Holocaust Remembrance Foundation and order it. We will mail it to you, and I will sign it for you, personalize it for you, and mail it to you. If you buy it on the internet, we won't get a nickel out of it.
Oh man!
Please buy it on our website.
Gotcha. So the ZachorFoundation.org is where we can find your book, Living a Life That Matters.
www.zachorfoundation.org.
Gotcha. We'll make sure that we pass that message along as best as we can.
Okay. So, thank you.
Of course.
Do you have any questions, Keegan?
Oh, I've got a ton, but let's check with Gail real quick. What do we got to do? Do we got hit any other notes or anything? Okay. Uh, Holy cow. I mean, oh, Ben, Mr. Lesser, you've gone through more than my human brain is capable of imagining. And yet here you are telling your story. And it is truly I remarkable. I don't know if I have the right words to describe it because it's a testament to strength. It's a testament to all sorts of uh, inspiration because you had to dig deep, and I'm sure had I been in that situation, I would have not known what to do. So I'm sure you didn't really know what to do either. From
Keegan,
the sounds of it, there was no nothing.
Keegan,
Uh
listen
huh.
to me. I don't think I'm smarter than you are or anyone else. I think God protected me.
Mm.
And during the war, I lost my belief in God after I
Mm.
saw them throwing a girl into a fiery pit alive. I says, where is God? Could there be a God? But then after the war, I was thinking about it. It's been bothering me day and night.
Mm.
See, God gave us all free will. Because of this, He cannot interfere if we people choose to kill each other. He gave us free will. He can't
Mm.
stop it or tell us what to do because of this.
Mm.
That's my reasoning. Okay.
Mm.
But I have seen so many miracles
Mm.
in my during my period. Why was I so lucky to survive? I couldn't imagine. The only answer I have is that God needed a witness, someone who can talk about it.
Mm.
And I do. Believe me, every night I have sleepless nights because of this. But someone has to do it.
Mm.
And I think God gave me the years because of this. So
Mm.
it's my duty. I'm doing it willingly.
And I'm so glad that you are. Uh, your message, your story needs to be heard. It's a very important part of history that cannot and will not be forgotten. Uh,
Thank you. Thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
And so I'm so glad you're able to share everything with us. And I know that your book has so much more, but one of my other questions really just has to be how did you just how did you get back to normal life? How or quote unquote normal because you went from extreme to extremes and going back to a normal life. There's no such thing
Well,
as normal after that. And
my
so,
life is not normal. I have, I dream and I have nightmares every night. You can't call it normal. But I know this is my job. I have to do what I'm doing to you,
mm,
telling my story.
mm,
So I have to stay well to continue doing that. And I
and
hope I can do it for a long, long time more.
well, I think you're doing an amazing job, and you're getting on podcasts and stuff, and you're helping get that message out there. You're keeping up with the
Exactly.
times, and
I am doing this because I want you to carry the message out to people. because there's so many Holocaust deniers now. And you know, they think if they say a lie long enough, some people will believe it. And on the internet, some youngsters can believe it. So we have to counteract it. And this is why I depend on you.
And I'll be sure to carry this message with me in my channel and spread it as far as we can. So again, to anyone out there listening, it is the Zachor Foundation.org, where we can get your book. Man, I just have the Zachor Foundation.org.
Yes. www.zachorfoundation.org. Zachor means remember in Hebrew.
Remember.
Yeah. ZachorFoundation.org means remember in Hebrew.
That is awesome. And that's what we're going to make sure we do.
There is so much more you can learn. We have a shout out program.
Okay. Can you tell me about that?
Right. You can shout out on our website.
Okay.
You shout out for peace, for love, you know, against anti-Semitism. Whatever you decide to shout out, you do it. And it's going to stay on our website for generations to come. If you wish to add a picture, a photograph, the photograph and your shout out will come out generations from now. Your great-great-grandchildren will be able to say, oh, my grandfather shouted out for that. I mean, I'm the only one in the world who's doing this.
That is too cool, because I can definitely get behind that, and I know that the audience can also get behind that.
I also have an AI. You know what that is?
Artificial
I
intelligence?
had an AI before anyone ever heard about it.
Really?
Really. I paid a lot of money to get on my website, and you can actually see me on my website, take me on your telephone, and take me home to your house and talk to me, and I'll answer you.
That is awesome. Okay.
Yeah. They're unbelievable things that I did to create this situation. The Zachor Foundation has great things.
It sure sounds like it.
Yeah. We have a curriculum. Curriculum.
Okay. A curriculum for history teachers and stuff like that to help remember the Holocaust, because it does start.
They're using my curriculum all over the world.
Nice. That is good. And it's free. That's awesome.
It's free. Everything is free. The only one who's paying for all those things are me.
It's not quite free, but I see what you're saying. Someone's got to make it happen, and you're the one that's choosing to do so. And for that, I can't thank you enough. I think you're doing the world a huge service, and I hope that your story is just bought by many people, and that we can just I mean, you don't have too bad of arthritis, right? You might have a lot of signatures to be doing after this airs. But that's the whole point. We want everyone to hear your story. We want people to know that these kind of things happen, and there are atrocities that we can't sweep under the rug. There are things that can't be forgotten. They can't be unspoken about. They have to be shouted out that they happen, because if we don't remember it, history will repeat itself. And one of my questions is, what is a warning sign? What is something that you saw coming that if you saw it coming again, you'd be like, hey, that's a big red flag?
What that? Red flag? But I didn't understand.
So if since you went through this and you experienced it firsthand, if there was something going on in today's society or something, what would be a red flag to make us sit there and go, hey, like, that sounds familiar, you know?
And anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism that's going on, especially among the youngsters in the schools. That's something like similar to what happened during the war, World War II, but not quite. But the anti-Semitism has to stop. Why? Why?
Yeah.
The Jewish people are not doing anything wrong to be anti-Semitic.
No, I just think some people are just out to make the world a worse place, and unfortunately,
I mean, my feeling is the hatred has to stop. Hitler and the Nazis did not start with killing. It all started with hate. Hate propaganda. That's how it began. So therefore, this has to be stopped. This is why we expect you to come up with these stories. Some people will hear it, and they didn't know that there even was a Holocaust.
Yeah. And you can't let that happen. So I'm not about to let it happen. I remember the first time I heard about it on the internet, that there was such a thing as Holocaust denying. I was like, hold up, what? It kind of really shook me, because I know how important that is in everyone's history. It's not just for the Jewish people. It's not just for Germany. It's for anyone and everyone, because there's so much that goes on to it, that to have someone that lived through it give us their experience is still just mind-blowing to me. So, and you're 96 years young?
Yeah.
You're still a strapping young lad, so you got plenty more years.
Right in. Yeah.
But is there anything that you want to see done with the Zachor Foundation? What is one of the goals that you want to do with it? What is something that you haven't achieved with your foundation that you're still aiming for?
Yes, if we had the finances, we would go out and hire more people to do what you're doing. We want the whole world to know what was going on. And I can only do so much. But why? Why? If I had the funds, believe me, there would be more people like, was it Cindy that contacted you?
Correct.
There would be more Cindys out there. Because instead of talking to you alone, you should have a few of people get together, and I could talk to 5 or 6 instead of just one.
What if I could set
I'm
that up?
limited as how much I can talk for future. I don't know how many years I have. But this is what I would do, hire more Cindys.
What if I could set up a little guest panel or something? I do know some other podcasters, so why don't we try to set up something where we have 3 or 4 people like me come in here
that would be perfect.
and we can set up like a little questionnaire or something of the sorts.
I'd love that. I would love that.
All right.
Okay, well, you have a job, Keegan.
I sure do. Well, I'll reach out to some of the contacts that I know, and we'll see what we can get set up. I'll stay in touch with Cindy and Gail, I assume, as well. That way we can figure something out and get it put together and make something big out of it.
Tell you something, Keegan.
Yes, sir.
I'm very popular in Germany.
Ah.
In Germany, that professors that I told you that told me we made 2 mistakes. He took my book and he made a short version of it. Only the part about the Holocaust. And the Bavarian government saw that, so they printed this and they gave it out to each high school kid in Bavaria.
Oh, wow.
Each high school kid in Bavaria got it. So
that's cool.
If I had enough money, I would try to get this in every high school kid in Germany. They should hear this. They should know what this is. Because you can meet him. To Constant Begagen, you can meet him.
That's awesome.
This is so important for Germany. It's so very important that the German students will grow up to be pre-Hitler kind of people, you know, nice, friendly people. Can you imagine what it would mean if millions of these are given out to students? I don't want anything out of it. I don't want a penny out of it. All I want is the kids to get one free.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe we'll be able to help make that get started or something. I really don't know. The internet is an amazing place. A lot of people will listen to your story, and I mean, if we include a shout out with an email or something, you might end up with a lot of emails. Who knows?
And another thing, we get, you see those pins? Zachor, that means remember. We have given out over 2 million of these pins to our listeners.
Oh, wow.
And we're trying to get 6 million out.
4 million more to go. That is one third of the way. That's impressive. 2 million is a lot of people. A lot of pins.
Those people have personally listened to me and they got the pin.
That is awesome. We're gonna have to get a little sign-up sheet for people that listen to the show.
If I can listen, if I could see you in person, I'll give you a pin too.
I think I'll stick to a keyboard. But 6 million shout outs for the silent voices. That is awesome. I love that concept because if we're quiet about something, then not good things are happening, you know. And that's how bad things continue to get spread and keep going because people don't talk about it. And whenever you don't talk about it, people think it's okay. So it's good to let people know it's not okay.
Thank you. So, Keegan, see if you can get a few people like you together.
Yes, sir.
You know,
I can definitely do that.
thank you.
Yes. Okay. Of course. Of course. Thank you very much, Gail, and thank you very much, Ben. Mr. Lesser, it has been an absolute pleasure and an honor. And I mean, I really could just go on and on and on. But I mean, we have your book to read. In having that Q&A, I want to leave some stuff for that panel, because we can't ruin all of the surprises, right? But let's see. I guess I'll go ahead and do the radio closeout. So, hey, Mr. Ben, I do have one question for you. Do you know what the National Suicide Crisis Hotline number is?
I didn't hear that.
Do you know what the National Suicide Hotline number is?
No.
So, the National Suicide Hotline number is 988. So, if we can teach our kids how to dial 911, why can't we teach our friends and loved ones how to dial 988 whenever they're facing a crisis? So,
very good. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Ben. And thank you, Gail. Everyone, this has been Benjamin Lesser, Mr. Lesser, and just an amazing soul and foundation of the Zachor Foundation. So if you need, or if you want to read his book, which you should definitely get one, go over to that website. It will be in the description with the episode, and you'll be able to find this on YouTube, Facebook, all the places.
Yeah.
And we look forward to having you back on with a few other podcasters for a Q&A or something.
Thank you.
So,
thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like that.
I'm looking forward to it.
Bye.
So, all right.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Mr. Lesser.
Bye.